Hey there, and welcome to the Total Transition Podcast, where we explore life's journey with a focus on humanity at the center of change. I'm Jordana McGonigal. I'm your host and your navigator on this path, where every other week we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights from veterans who have successfully navigated their own transitions. Now, that word successful, you might get a little kickback from some of them, but the reality is that these are people that you know, people that you've met, people in your network who have really made the shift in and done so quite well, at least from an outside perspective. This week, we're welcoming Shawn Welsh, who, if you aren't lucky enough to know yet, this is your chance to fix that. We will have his LinkedIn profile up a little bit later. But Shawn is an Army veteran and co-founder and co-host of the VET S.O.S podcast, which features information and resources about veteran support organizations and key personnel in the veteran support community. He's got a passion for helping others. He started VET S.O.S to provide a lifeline to veterans, transitioning service members, and military spouses. So, Shawn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jordana. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you because what our viewers may or may not know is that you are our number one guest for this very podcast. And I was telling him I did this on purpose because Shawn and what he and his co-founders have built is just an incredible resource to have. And although we at the Recon Network focus on humanity a lot and all the emotion and all the stuff that comes on with that, eventually you've got to have the support network in place to really connect and do the things that you need to do. So, Shawn, I am super, super excited to have you here.
Likewise, anytime I can sit down and chat with you, I have a blast. You know, each time we've gotten together, it's been so much fun. And even when you were on our show, you know, if it wasn't for the help of your family, who knows if we would have been able to record.
I forgot about that. That's some crazy stuff on vacation and remembering I had to do a podcast at the last minute. That was super fun. Sorry about that. Well, so Shawn, I want to talk, as much as you're willing to, about your past. The first thing I like to do is set the stage of, who is this person in front of me, right? Not what did you found, not what have you done, but who are you? So give us a little bit of background. What is, you obviously went into the Army. How did you decide that was the step that you were going to make? When was that? And give us a little bit of background about your military career.
So 9/11 is really the answer there. I was working in music retail at the time. I'd already graduated college. I grew up in a Navy family. My dad was career Navy, and nothing against the military. I was just pursuing a different pathway. And 9/11 happened while we were preparing to open the store, and basically that was the trigger that really made me think, I need to do something probably a little bit more important. Didn't necessarily know I was going to make it a career, but decided to join the Army ultimately, mainly because the Coast Guard said I was too tall and they wouldn't take me. But went Army and wound up serving 20 years and having we'll call it a love-hate relationship. Some things were really good, some things I could do without. My travel agent in the military was horrible, but that's all good. I'm working on finding a better travel agent now that I'm out.
Well, I think any relationship that you have for 20 years has its challenges, so we can accept that a little bit. Now, was the Army your choice? You were trying to go your own path. You didn't go Navy, at least. So was that kind of your rebellious moment against your dad?
No, my dad told me to go Air Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Air Force really didn't give me the time of day when I went and talked to them. And I knew if I went Navy, I'd want to be in, like the naval warfare side of the house and want to be on a ship a lot. And I didn't want to do that. So I decided to join the Army. And instead I deployed every other year for the first 10 years. It basically, my wife and I, we'd gotten married roughly 2 years before I joined the military. And so we were essentially newlyweds the first 10 years. And, now that I'm retired and I'm around the house more, we're seeing how that whole thing works.
That's one thing that a lot of people don't think of in the transition process is all of the other humans around them. We focus so much on the individual and the job search and the benefits and that kind of thing. We forget, like, a lot of people haven't really experienced what it's like to be together all the time and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully, looks like it's going well for you so far.
We are doing very well. And, I was actually, my first job out of the military was put in a position where they needed people who could move around, and it was like, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to be a good fit. And, nothing against, either party. It was just, I wasn't ready to move around anymore, and I was ready to be home. And so, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, it's been an adventure. And, I don't know how much the kids like having me around as much because they get a lot more chores, but it's all good. We're getting ready to train the last one in driving. So, please pray for me.
I'm doing the same thing. The last one just hit the number and we're pushing her out of the nest. So I totally understand that. So when you were at some point you decided that, hey, 20 years is fun and all, but I gotta go, right? So what was that decision like? How do you make that kind of a decision after that length of time?
I was always told that you would know. And for me, I did,
Mhm.
what part of it being the body breaking down, because I joined at 28. So I was already 10 years older than the average person joining the military. And so, at 46, my body's like, hey, dummy, we're not going to do this anymore. So, made the decision to go ahead and retire. And, it just, everything just sort of aligned, where
Right.
we were heading for our next base lined up to close to where we wanted to be retired at. And, so just everything just sort of fell in place for me as
Yeah.
far as, hey, it's time to go. So
Yeah.
it actually made my decision very easy, and I have absolutely no regrets about it.
Yeah. So then you get out. How did that transition process go for you? How easy? Because we always like to say, "Oh, it'd be easy. Everybody hires vets, all this kind of stuff." And the reality is that's a big lie. So, what, how did that go? Just talk us through. Like, was it as easy as you thought? Was it a lot harder? Where were the challenges that you didn't see coming?
So, in the grand scheme of things, I had a very smooth transition, and in part mainly to the podcast. And I know we'll get
Mhm.
into that here in a little bit, but um, I didn't know where to start, just like most of us. So, I had a fellow senior NCO who was about 6 months ahead of me in the process. And so basically, I just jumped on his coattails to start. If he signed up for a class, I signed up for the same class. And I just sort of, started following what he was doing. And very quickly, you start to hear things, different organizations you should check out, different things that exist. I started getting into LinkedIn like they tell us to do. And so, slowly, this whole thing starts, just developing in front of me.
Mhm.
And, the one thing that well, there's a couple things I did. One is I started 2 years out. And, I sat down with my family and said, hey, we got 2 years to transition. You know, I know it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, but we all sort of have to go through this. And I want you to know that I need this time to set us up for success afterwards. And
Mhm.
so, even though there were a couple conversations down throughout those 2 years that weren't as pleasant, my wife gave me a lot of leadway to, try things and play with things and do whatever to try to figure out the next steps and set us up for success. And, ultimately everything worked out, pretty well. So we started with that conversation. And then, as I'm following my buddy, I start meeting my own people and learning about things. And, people telling me, hey, do this organization, do that organization.
Right.
And so you start hearing multiple people talk about the same organization. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And, so there were certain things like that lined up. And then the biggest thing for me was figuring out what I wanted to do. I've never had, like, I didn't grow up saying I'm going to be a soldier, I'm going to be a fireman or whatever. I don't know. I never really knew what I wanted to do. And I was just sort of open to try some things. And, so I started posting on LinkedIn and got very analytical about figuring out what I wanted to do. And so I started with all the things I was qualified to do. And then I started using Veterati and having these informational interviews about, hey, tell me about a PMP and what you're doing and this. And I quickly learned I was never going to get a PMP. And, so just start crossing things off the list until I got down to like 5 things that I knew that I would be very happy doing. And so that's where I started, focusing my efforts. And the first decision point we made was where to retire. Once I knew where, everything else sort of fell into place. We started looking for houses, we started looking for schools, for the kids and so on and so forth. And then I could focus my job efforts. And, so ultimately my transition was pretty smooth, but, I had the support of my family and I forced myself to get out of my comfort zone. I started early and then I was also willing to try things that I probably wouldn't have tried otherwise. And I can't complain. It's been a fun journey so far, and I'm still trying all kinds of new things.
Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think that, when we talk about the transition process, you typically do know you have an extended amount of time if you take advantage of it, right? And where we see a lot of challenges with veterans that we work with is I got time. And then the exit is upon us. We don't know what we want to be when we grow up. We don't know where we're headed or anything like that. And so it creates just the time crunch, creates pressure in and of itself. It's like putting yourself in a pressure cooker. So, spending 2 years, that's amazing. And just having the opportunity to be able to try things out. I mean, that's an amazing experience. What are the things that you tried that you were immediately like, negative, this is not happening?
So I'll add real quick to that by starting 2 years out, you're able to spread things out because most commands still expect you to do some work, and so when you can spread things out, it's not as big an impact to the command that they're losing you either. So that's really the benefit of starting early, in my opinion. Right. But things I tried, like I wound up doing the PMP boot camp. And I never tested. Like by the time that was done, I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's no way." Not that I didn't know the information. I kind of did. It's just I had no desire whatsoever to do that.
Right. The rest of my life looks like this.
During my transition, I did about 26 different programs, which is overkill. I mean, 100% overkill. And I had David Trenholm come on the show, the podcast. And one of the things he talked about was how 75% of what every organization does is almost the same. A lot of them talk about resumes, interview skills, networking, things like that. It's that 25% that makes them different in that special sauce that you kind of need to look for. And so, through doing all of those, there was a lot of overlap, and there were some that I didn't need to do. Some were not traditional transition things either, so like I did some of those, like the Why Institute, learning, the purpose behind your why once you figure out what your why is, and some of those things, and a DISC assessment to learn my personality skills, and things like that to really help me learn more about myself and how I operated. And I think those were highly beneficial. And, some people like them, some people don't, but I would encourage everybody to do everything they can to learn about themselves. And so, things like that worked out well for me. Some of the programs that I recommend to everybody is like the Leader Transition Institute, from We to Me. Hands down the best program I did for me. Just a phenomenal program. I did 4Block, which is a great program, especially because every week they bring in organizations to talk to you. So these companies that are actually hiring are in there talking to you, so you can ask questions, you can learn about it, and you might meet the right person to actually, get your foot in the door. The Commit Foundation is another great one that I did, and they give you a coach for 6 months as you work through their online program. Just really, really enjoyed that one. Like I said, I used Veterati, which is no longer around, but we have a couple new ones that are popping up now to fill that void. So, use those opportunities to find mentors to, have those informational interviews, learn from them, learn what you don't want to do like I did, things like that. And then, of course, ACP, where you get a coach for a year. I'm still, 2 years out, I'm still talking to my coach. It's just awesome, so.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you mentioned the self-awareness, like really figuring out who you are. And that's a huge, huge step, from our perspective. That's a huge step to figuring out where you belong outside of what job do you want to do? Who are you? Where are you going? And how do you find stuff that supports that life, right? Supports you as a human rather than just you as project manager, right? So so how did all of this, because, obviously you're playing in the programs, you're trying them out, you're researching different opportunities. You spent 2 years doing what a lot of people come out and are trying to cram into 3 or 6 months, right?
Yeah.
How did that influence you starting the VET S.O.S podcast?
So the podcast, we actually started 6 months into my transition. So,
Wow.
The very first program I did had nothing to do with the military. My buddy that I was coattailing signed up for the Who You Know Show Career Summit. It's a group of guys out of Dallas, Texas that run this, career program to help you, be seen and make it through the ATS and things like that, and give you tips and tricks and what have you. And so I did that program, and it was phenomenal because it had nothing to do with the military. So it immediately changed my mindset. And, I highly recommend people look at that program too, just because there's some great information there, and the guys who run it are phenomenal. And, as I did that, then I started getting more into LinkedIn, and then I started communicating with these guys. Trevor Houston, who I consider a mentor, he's the one who actually pushed me to start the podcast. He called me one day, and I was starting to do videos on LinkedIn and stuff like that. He said, "Hey, you need to do a podcast." I'm like, "No, I don't." It just wasn't something that was on my radar, and he kept pushing and telling me, "Hey, you need to do this. You need to do this." And so, we started going back and forth talking about it. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot, and I didn't know anything about specifically podcasting. And, he had some ideas for podcasts, and I was like, that's not me. And so, walking the dog one day, thinking about this, I decided, there's at the time, I think we were being told there's 40,000 plus veteran support organizations. And I did some research, and there was nobody really just focused on that. There's people that talk about transition. There's people that interview people in transition space and so on and so forth. But I was like, what if we just focused on transition? And so that's where the podcast was born. And it just so happened that his co-host, Mark Elder, who's part of this, Who You Know Summit, was a veteran and came on board for the first year to help us, start VET S.O.S and be the first co-host and the co-founder. And Mark's still, very much a part of what we're doing. In fact, he's filled in a couple of times this year. And, anytime we all get together and talk about things like that and, pathways and where we want to go. And, so it's great to have, him. And then, of course, Eric was our second co-host. And, he went and started his ministry, and he's still, quote unquote, on the bench. So he comes in and fills in from time to time. And, so it's great having this group of people who still love this mission, care about what we're doing, and want to still contribute. So, if one of us can't make it, I can usually find one of us to jump in and fill in and graciously do it. It's not even like pulling teeth. So it's just great to have that network and how we're doing. But that's really how it all started. And it was all because of that program that I did first. I met these people, and it just continued to grow. And, and 2.5 years later, we're still rocking and rolling and having a great time doing it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the podcast. I'm familiar with it, obviously. There's a really great episode, by the way, with me. But anyway, but talk about what is the overall goal? What are you trying to achieve, and how are you trying to help other veterans in that transition space find those resources?
So for us, it's all about education. With Mark being my co-founder, he was all in support of that because he works in financial things, and he's all about financial education. So he was all about helping to educate all about the resources that are out there. So, if there's an organization that works in transition, if there's people who work in transition, we want to talk to them, have them come on and just have this conversation. One, the personal background, what their transition was like. If they weren't military, how did they get to working with military? And then, talking about their organization and what they're doing to help the veteran community. And so we're building this library of videos of, all these wonderful people that are doing great things to help our community. And what I love about it is it's not just for the transitioning service member. It's also for the spouses. It's also for veterans who are already out, because a lot of these organizations provide benefits to all these different organizations. And so, then Eric came on board, and Eric, injected a whole bunch of new ideas. And so we grew a little bit that way. And, then you have two first sergeants on the thing. So what could go wrong? Right. So,
nothing,
right.
Absolutely nothing.
But the beauty of it is you had, two senior non-commissioned officers who love to train, love to educate, and the passion was there. And I think it was conveyed in the thing. And then, Keith came on board, another senior non-commissioned officer who just loves to educate, coach, mentor. So it's been phenomenal, because the people I've been able to work with truly care. And that's just been absolutely amazing. And so the main program is all about the transition space. And, we've had people who work with, as psychoanalysts with PTSD patients and things like that. We've had traditional transition organizations. Excuse me. One of my new favorite episodes was actually my number one this year on Spotify, was Veterans Last Patrol, which deals with veterans in hospice. So it's your final transition, and it was really neat to see what they're doing, and what they're giving back to those families and those service members there at the end of their lives. And it was just really powerful. And, so dealing with all this, and we have a blast. We've had some great people come on, and there's so many wonderful people in this space. But then this year we're like, you know what? Or I'm sorry, last year, because it's now 2025. We're like, excuse me, what could we do? What else could we do? So we expanded into this educational spotlight where Hira Paulin has come on, Dr. Hira, and we focus on the veteran programs on campuses, or those programs that are helping veterans and their families pursue education. Because I might be looking at simplistically, but in a lot of cases, education's education. So you may have two schools you're looking at with the same type of program, and you're like, I don't know which one to choose. Well, maybe the veteran program they have on campus might be that solution.
Right. You have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah. And then we also started a veteran entrepreneur spotlight, where we take veterans and veteran spouse entrepreneurs and bring them on the show to talk about their journey and share tips and tricks for future generations of entrepreneurs. And we did this because those are two major pathways in transition. And so we're just, continuing to build, and we got our eyes on, two additional shows that we're hopefully starting this year, as well as an online platform for every veteran and veteran spouse to tell their transition story.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a lot of stuff planned for this year.
I got a lot of free time.
Well, there's some over here. We got stuff you could do too. So
yeah.
Well, okay. So I like to focus on this because what you're providing the veteran community, post-military community, let's say as a whole, is obviously very valuable. But how does it feed you? What is it that you're getting out of this that makes Shawn say, oh, this year I'm not only sticking with it, but we're going to grow this, and we're going to make this bigger, and we're going to change over here, and we're going to add this. What is that is really driving you in this endeavor?
I'm as surprised as anybody. I'll first say that, because honestly, I thought when I retired, I was walking away from the military, and the most you'd see me is at the commissary or PX occasionally. And so I never anticipated doing what we're doing. And so it started with just how blessed I was during my transition. I was hearing all these horror stories from people, what not to do. And I was learning from people who made the mistakes before me. And so going through, it was a huge blessing. And this was a way for me to continue to give back. Two, man, we have a lot of fun. And that's the thing. There's some frustrating pieces to it, right? But there's frustration in everything you do at times.
Right.
But man, the people we've met, the people we get to have conversations with, it's inspirational. We laugh a lot. We have a good time, and we don't have any like strict format or anything like that. We try to keep it conversational, and there's certain key things we try to capture each one. But keeping it natural just makes it so much more fun, and we're always amazed how quickly the episodes go when we're recording.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're just like, man, that was fun. And I'm learning about organizations now that I wish I would have known about when I was still in the
Right.
military, that could have helped my soldiers, and so just being able to get that information out. And this past year in 2024, we started to hear from people. People are reaching out to us saying, hey, I want to come on the show, talk about my organization. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. But we've also been getting thank yous. Hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. This episode meant a lot to me. This really changed my life. And starting to hear that, it's just like, wow, because we said from the very beginning, if we can help one person, it's all been worth it. And it's just an amazing feeling. And I'm not doing it for any kind of gain or financial gain or anything like that. It's truly, this is a way we can give back. We want to educate. We want to help people try to have a smooth transition.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite resources out there? Because you talk to everybody, everybody. So who, and this isn't to, throw some shade or anything, but who out there is doing something incredible that is worth paying attention to?
So obviously yeah.
I'll pay you later.
Yep. But like that, and the name of the annual thing you do is, I'm drawing a blank on right now.
The VET Summit. Yep.
The VET Summit. The first year you did it where it was virtual, that was an amazing platform. Yep. And just really impressed with how you're embracing technology and really trying to help people. And, Annie Brock with Leader Transition Institute, I mean, her program to me is the best thing I did. And I just really love what they're doing. And such an amazing team up there. ACP, you have to do ACP. Right. Their ability to match you with a mentor is ridiculous. Like, it's like a 98% success rate first time go, in their matching ability. It's ridiculous how good they are at it. And the people that you meet, and just the relationship I have, or I do have with my mentor, is amazing. And so like I said, 4Block is another great one. What they're doing and how you get to talk to companies and things like that experience in itself is worth it. And of course, the Commit Foundation is another one of my favorites. Having that coach for 6 months to really, help you focus is really important.
Right. So I always try to end, I know we're almost out of time, but there's one thing. If you had one piece of advice that you could go back to a few years ago and tell Shawn then, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, the thing I tell everybody now is try to start as early as possible. But really, the main thing for me is give yourself some grace. You've never done this before. The military transition, maybe, some people have. They've been in the service multiple times, in and out, whatever, so they have, and things have changed since they did it the first time.
Right.
But give yourself some grace, because you're going through a major life change, regardless if you've been in 4 years or if you've been in 20 years, that it's a major life change, because you've just spent a certain number of years in a very structured system. So now you have to relearn, some of the civilian things, and, and the longer you've been in, it's even harder. So,
right.
Give yourself some grace. Understand you're going to make some mistakes. Understand you're going to fail, at times. Learn from it, grow, and move on. But most of all, give yourself some grace. Don't let yourself get to the points that we hear people so often, the suicidal ideations, the alcoholism, homelessness, things like that. Give yourself the grace and, take a breath, look around. There's organizations and people that are here to help you.
Right.
There's no need to do it by yourself.
I absolutely love that. I really do, because, you know, this is new. This is new territory for a lot of people. And I think there is an inherent drive for perfection, whether or not that is hammered into veterans by the military or not. But there is this need to, I have to do this, I have to do it right, and I can't fail.
Yeah.
And the reality is that that failure is a step. And while it may feel like a setback, it's actually a step in the right direction, because you kind of know now something you didn't know before. And I absolutely love that. Just the idea of just go easy on yourself. It's life. Life is hard enough without adding pressure to something that is already so big and so dramatic and so filled with all of this chaos. So I love that. Love that. All right. Well, this is your chance. Any parting words? Anything you want to add? Do a promo. I'm gonna throw your I'm gonna throw your LinkedIn up here, because I want everyone who listens to this to go connect with you online and follow you, and then bug him to get on the show. But for now, definitely go connect with Shawn online.
Oh, please connect. And I'd love to have a conversation with you. I don't by any means know all the answers, but I know a lot of people, and I'm always willing to make connections and help people try to find the right people to talk to. And that's what you're going to find once you start transitioning, getting out in this world, is there's a lot of veterans out here and non-veterans that are out here helping people, make this transition and get out here. So don't try to do it by yourself. There's no need to. Put aside the pride, put aside the all drive, no quit, it doesn't hurt us to ask for help, and understand everybody out here still expects you to do the work. There's no handouts, but there's definitely a hand up, helping you get on the right path, find the right direction. And please connect. Let's have a conversation, and check out the podcast at VET S.O.S podcast.com. You can find all our shows there, and hopefully a couple of new shows coming soon.
Well, awesome. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for being open and just telling us your story. I know that's not stuff that everybody wants to talk about, but I really appreciate you sharing the ups and the downs and all of that with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordan. This has been fantastic, and I know you're going to be killing it with this. This is going to be a great resource.
We will see. Time will tell. But for now, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out future episodes. Be sure to check out past episodes once this thing is up and running. Connect with Shawn and connect with us online. We are happy to be able to provide any type of information that we can. And like Shawn said, we are here to help. So if we can be of any help to you, I know that both people on this session right now are able and willing to do so, and we'll be happy to take care of you. So thanks everybody for showing up, and we'll see you next time.